Good evening, Gracepoint. It is so good to be with you, and welcome back to another week of Hot Topics. If it is your first time here, this is where we speak and discuss things that are exactly what we call ourselves, a hot topic. Today we're going to be looking at maybe I'll let Hloni explain a little bit more about what we'll be looking at today.
So as a church, it's a great opportunity for us to really just engage about our different views in terms of what is happening. We all feel differently. We've got our own opinions in terms of the church gathering. The banning on church gatherings being lifted. And so we're going to be reflecting just to see what it means for us, but also the different opinions, the different views, and how we all feel about it. And it's exciting that we also have Jackie to join us in today's Hot Topics. And it's actually an exciting opportunity to also show how theological reflection can differ according to age.
Oh, boy. Are we going to put that on the spot? You're going to say that we differ theologically because of age. Thank you so much, Lonnie and Rebecca. I feel incredibly old, and you should probably bury me already. So anyway, guys, it's good to be with you. And I think it's probably really special to be able to have this debate around what does it mean when the churches are opening. And I think it's a good debate to have on today, because today is Pentecost Sunday. And really, if we celebrate anything on Pentecost Sunday, we celebrate the birth of the church. And it is kind of, what does that mean? It means that somehow the church was set apart by a different presence. And that presence isn't our own. It's not even our opinions. It's not even our debate. It's not our apologetics. And it's not even our theology. There is a presence other than ourselves that actually begins the life of the church. And so I know tonight we're going to get into a discussion around, well, what does it mean if the church gathers together? And kind of like, I want to start it from a premise to say, I don't believe that the church was ever closed. And I don't believe that by gathering together, even with the limitations that we're going to face, that doesn't make us essential. I think that sometimes the biggest thing for the church is to wake up to the reality of change. And I think somehow over thousands of years, we struggle with the idea of change. And the fact is that there is no more normal. We never go backwards. We always go forward. And it's how do we respond to what this new normal presents us with? And there is a sense that we like a dualistic mind. You either have this opinion or that opinion, and that kind of makes you for us or against us. And I think that that's what this topic is about. I think it presents us with, well, what does it mean? What are the implications? What is the change? What is the new normal? Because that's really what people kind of are beginning to live with, the new normal. So, yes, we will have differences of opinion, and it might not just be age. It might be other stuff, or it might very well be age. So, I'm in the hot seat tonight with you on Hot Topics.
I think, Hloni, I think that it may come down to age, and I think that is I just don't think that it is. So, Hloni and I are both millennials, and you are a boomer. And I don't know, baby boomers have been facing a lot of controversy at the moment. Well, I would say in the last year or so. So I think that you're quite woke as a person.
Oh, thank you.
I was always going to grow up a feminist, liberal, because of you. So I think that you aren't necessarily fall into the I don't think it's age as in us versus millennials versus baby boomers or whatever. I don't think that's the issue. I think that the way that we think might be quite different. And definitely our approach to theology. I'm of the belief that the people are the church and the building isn't the church. And I struggle to wrap my head around the hitting the curve, being over the curve in terms of coronavirus. And what if we add to, not Gracepoint, the church as a whole, what if we add to the capacity that the hospitals reach, which we've been so carefully trying not to do, and what if we unintentionally already we put more strain on an already strained system?
I kind of want to I like that, Rebecca, because, I think that what you raise is, what if we add? And I'm going to kind of put this out there, and it's probably even in itself contentious. We've looked globally. We know that in parts of Asia, in parts of Korea, we know that in parts of Europe, in parts of America, we know all over the world, we have statistics that have shown that the gathered church has added to this pandemic. Absolutely no doubt about that. And I think that you're right. It would be foolish not to imagine that the church gathering would not add to that. There's a wonderful saying. Before I went into ministry, I studied law, and you learn this term early in law called on a balance of probabilities. So you have to look at, is that possible that people will be infected by the virus if they come to church? And on a balance of probabilities, it is very probable that that could happen. Now, that is not desirable. That is not something that anybody wants. And definitely, even if you take like super duper care, and we have a great site, and obviously we have a unique opportunity that we're in a very privileged environment, and we'll easily be able to kind of get Gracepoint to a place where the risk is eliminated. But the fact remains, it will not completely be eliminated. And that is the reality. And I suppose the facts, I mean, we've seen this counter-infection between priests and between ministers, and we know that people have been infected at funerals. And so somehow, I think the biggest thing is our being, my humanity, actually infects your humanity. And I think that that's where the struggle is. I think the struggle is actually how we actually affect and infect one another. And it's almost like, what is the first thing you do when you have to go for a corona test? You try and figure out how you could have actually got that virus when you've been exposed to it and who you can blame. And so there's a sense that on a macro scale, that is such a deep pain that we carry. Because the truth is, this virus is infected person to person. We are actually dangerous to one another. And that is the reality. I'm not saying it in a way that is glib. I'm not saying it in a way that is just fobs it off. I'm saying it in a way that is what's so devastating about this pandemic. And it's not going to change. Like, my sister's son has it at the moment. So it's not like it's out there. It's real. They don't know where he got it. And it's like, getting this pandemic is going to be devastating. It is horrible, and it's kind of, just because we see ourselves as essential doesn't mean that we are above the law, the rules, whatever the case may be. It's like, how do we carry our humanity in a very fragile way? Because that's really what this pandemic is teaching us.
But my struggle with it, this yesterday after the president spoke for 2 hours, I kind of struggled. I stopped doing everything I was doing. Updated my Facebook status after much thought, and this morning I actually deleted it after realizing we're going to have a hot topic, meaning I've got a voice, an opportunity to give my opinion to the institution as a young person within the organization. So I was like, great, Facebook does not need my opinion anymore. But this was my struggle.
Yeah.
My struggle was that the church's response should not be individualistic. Because the church ought to play a prophetic role that influences government into understanding things on a macro level. Now, as a family, we've been able to adapt.
Yeah.
The lockdown has been of great benefit. It has given us an opportunity to adapt. As a church in the northern suburbs, as many other churches, we were able to adapt. The lockdown has given us a great opportunity. But what I've been deeply struggling with is, how do we look past our privilege as individuals and say, this is the stance that the church must assume, and be a prophetic voice that directs government in a direction, that points government in a direction that will be of benefit to the entire community? Because I think of the many churches where there is no chance they'll be able to put up the required stuff in order to comply to the regulations. And that's where I am still struggling as a young person.
And you're absolutely right, Cloney. You're absolutely right, because, I don't know, one of the things that, just the logistics of putting up this stuff, okay, is actually going to create havoc, and it's also going to require resources. And like in places often where churches are impoverished and have absolutely no access to resources, to spend resources on money you don't have just so that you can open. And I think that I suppose we're looking for the essence, all right? What is the purpose of the church? what does it mean? How do we define the church? Is it about gathering together? Why do we need to gather together? Just think about today, okay? Think about today. Today is Pentecost Sunday, all right? What is the one thing we read about? They gathered together. You know, it's like, I think that sometimes even from a place of privilege, okay, we can project ourselves into that situation. I think that part of what we need to do is we need to listen to everybody. Just because we are in a place of privilege and we foresee the impact that this could make for churches that are not necessarily in a place of privilege, we might actually get it wrong. For many churches, they actually only have 50 or less people that actually worship there. Actually, many churches gather in outside, and so the risk is eliminated drastically when you're outside. So I always think to myself that part of what this decision has shifted us into is to, well, what now emerges? It's like, one of the things that's been hard about this pandemic is that it's a gear change all the time. You make the adjustments all the time. You make the shifts all the time. And I do not believe that I do not have a voice that speaks for the whole church. I don't have a voice that speaks for other communities. Right now, I have a voice that speaks for Gracepoint, and I want to speak really responsibly from that position. I have a voice that actually is trying to figure out what this means for me theologically. One of the things that I'm looking at is, what is the idea of legitimacy for the church? Where are we legitimate? Are we legitimate because we have constitutions that are legitimate? Are we legitimate because our theology is legitimate? Or are we only really legitimate in practical ways of how we reach out? So for me, there's so many issues here. There's the issue of human life. And never must that be tampered with, and kind of, this is going to be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So this is going to be an ebb and a flow, and it's let's hear the opinion. That's what I love about millennials. Actually, I love that about the platforms of social media. And I caught your social media post before you deleted that. And it's just kind of, let's have it out there, because when the debate is there, it kind of, it actually diffuses division, and it's like, it's okay to have different views, and let me tell you, if anybody's going to get reckless, that's no good, and so this is not about being reckless, and it's also not about being, what does the 50 number mean? There's so much debate. This is about adjusting for me into a way that a new normal begins to emerge. And that, the 50 for now, it might be 50 for a year, it might be 50 for 6 months, it might be 50 for 3 months, what does it mean? The fact is that there are limitations to the way we need to adjust.
Yeah, I think that there was just 3 things I wanted to say. I think that we are, first of all, very fortunate that we are even able to have this conversation, to even have this debate. I think a lot of leadership in churches would, that's certainly been my experience, would shut down this type of conversation for fear of judgment or fear of saying the wrong thing. But I think that we're very fortunate and privileged to be handed the space to have difficult conversations without feeling as though we have to give a certain answer. So I think that Gracepoint just does that really well. So Similo and you have just really allowed us and given us the space quite freely to speak about this, which is something that I think we could potentially take for granted. So I just think that having this conversation is necessary and only possible because of you allowing it. I just think that, just with that out of the way, I just wanted to say, I think that we also have a social responsibility to people. We have a social responsibility to look after people, to care for people, and not intentionally put people in harm's way. I have so many people at Gracepoint, older people, grannies, like my grand's age, who have had such significant impact. And I can name some off the top of my head right now that I love and care about. And those are the people I'm concerned with. Those are the people that I worry about, people who are older and compromised. And I know those type of people will want to be serving as soon as they can on Sundays. They'll want to be gathering. They want to be making us tea and coffee after the services. And we have to almost play a parenting role to these people who really, really want to serve, but we have to almost say, this is not a safe or practical time. So we have a social responsibility to people, to young, to old, to babies, to young adults. We have a social responsibility. And then the third thing I just wanted to quickly say is we are significantly put ahead because of our privilege as a church. We are significantly, in a race, everyone starts the same, right? Like if you at the Olympics or whatever. But in this race, we are significantly ahead of other churches because of the privileged position that we are put in. And I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Churches in America have all opened.
Yeah, they have.
And there are some churches who are not opening because of the idea of the socials. And just to say, the difference between us and America at the moment is our president has been responsible in his approach of a 50 people limit.
And they have no limits.
And that is the huge and that's where Cyril Ramaphosa actually needs to be. He has cautiously approached this, not carelessly. And I think that is also something that needs to be taken into consideration. We're not opening the doors to the thousands, we're opening it to the 50. But we still have a social responsibility to old people, to young adults, to teenagers, to people in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And I guess that's also where, for me, I feel compromised,
I think maybe also to pick up on that, Rebecca, is to actually start asking ourselves, what does it mean to be the church in this new space? Because, for one thing, it's like, what are the symbols that make us church? The physical buildings, as we know, is a massive feature, but that is not what makes us church. It's like, here again, it says, let's think, let's delve deep into what really makes us church. The next big debate is going to be communion and baptism. And, it's like, what's going to happen if we infect each other with the sacraments that actually are really precious to us. So I think the debate is healthy. I think the debate must continue. I think that the debate is the formulation, Lonnie, you spoke about it earlier on, of a new theology, of what is our response. How is it? I think the world is going to be turned upside down. In fact, the world is upside down. Nothing's ever going to be the same. And it's like, we're learning. We're making history. We're addressing things that have shaped us. We're addressing that we have privilege. We're addressing that we have insight. We're also addressing that we can create havoc, and so let's think about this. I know it's just so cheesy, but kind of what would Jesus do? Where would we actually see Jesus in all of this? It's like, I saw people worshiping after Ed. And just praying like in an IKEA parking lot, I've seen churches that have been doing drive-in church. So like you arrive in your car, there's the stage. Like those are crazy things. Like, maybe our need to get to a physical building needs to be reinterpreted and owned. It's like, what is my faith journey all about? And so, solving the impact of a church building will be an easier solve. The essence is, who are the people that are going there? What are we going there for? What is the purpose of the church? Why do we exist as the embodied? One of the things that I've been looking at is embodiment, like being present. We speak about incarnation. But what is embodiment? Like, what does it mean to be present with you in my vulnerability, in my pain, in my privilege? And in my dreams, it's like, how do I impart Christ to you? So Lonnie, there's no answers to what does it mean theologically now. And Rebecca, I think that you keep raising and you keep us bringing to the point of how our humanity must be really, really careful. Because at the end of the day, we are going to be judged by how we did this. There's no doubt about that.
Look, I think part of my difficulty has also just been around in terms of timing.
Yeah.
Is it worth it, to open church doors in winter when reason tells us that it's most likely to be the one time when infection rates will go up?
Yeah.
I went to my cousin's child passed on last week. Went to a funeral. I think it was 2 weeks back, we had the funeral and the regulation and all of that. It is so difficult to
Yeah.
be around people who are weeping
Yeah.
and not embrace them.
Yeah.
It is in our human nature to want to respond, you know, and where I find myself struggling the most, you know, today is Pentecost. Pentecost is about a outpouring of a spirit, of the Holy Spirit that connects us to God, and in that connection with God, we become one with one another. And in that oneness with one another, you know, I think my biggest challenge and my homework going forward as a Christian is how do I think Richard Raw spoke about it a couple of weeks back, where the devotion spoke about moving from where we are into a place of solidarity with those who are in the margins.
Yeah.
And how do I acknowledge those who are lesser privileged in the margins and
Yeah.
acknowledge that, okay, cool, I moved from this premise. This is where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do I affect virtue ethics in such a way that I'm in solidarity with those who are in the margins, and I become a prophetic voice that speaks into the different, you know, I think that's more my homework, and that's more my struggle and my work going forward as a Christian.
You spoke about like Pentecost, and the thing is that, I mean, everything around Jesus, you know, everything around him was just chaotic, you know, and he ascends, and I've been thinking, I told you, I've been talking about embodiment. He ascends in his brokenness. It's his broken body that ascends, and he kind of connects heaven and earth, and earth. So, you know, incarnation is about connecting heaven with earth, and for me, ascension is connecting earth with heaven. And so the Holy Spirit just kind of brings a fire into that presence. And just like, you know, you were speaking, I was just thinking to myself, you know, we actually need a fire to burn us as a church, you know, to burn us. So who knows, just because the churches are going to be open today, maybe we won't be open in 2 weeks' time, you know. The thing is that we don't know what the impact of this is going to be. It's kind of, but we definitely know we need a fire of God's presence, because somehow when the fire comes, it actually, it burns us, it sets us ablaze, it allows us to ask all the necessary questions. And for once we can say, we don't have all the answers. The church always positions itself, even from a theological perspective. I have the answers and it's said. Let me tell you something. We're cooking clueless. One day we're deciding to have meetings. Oh, no, we're not. Oh, the next day we are. It's like, actually, we don't know. The truth is, we don't know. We don't know what's coming tomorrow. We don't know what's coming in the next day. And quite frankly, it's okay. You know, I think that one of the things that Jesus actually sits with his disciples is, I want you to wait because something else is coming. And I want to end today with what I started. You know, it's not about what we know. It's not about how we position ourselves theologically from whatever position of power or of knowing, or quite frankly, there's so many elements even about this 50 worship that I don't understand, you know. It is gigantic. I know that producing Gracepoint on a Sunday, mainly to an online service, is going to be beneficial to this particular community, because we'll be able to produce the service as a service and have it out there. And that, for me, it will feel live, although it is not live. But that doesn't mean that deals with all the answers around what it means to worship. We know less than what we know less than what we don't know, you know. There's so much we don't know. And that's what this time is about. It's we don't have the answers. We're walking this journey blindly. And I'm going to end with Paul, you know. It's in his being blinded on his road to Damascus that he begins to discover God's presence. So it's like it is a blinding that will basically bring revelation later, you know.
Yeah, so I think that this conversation is obviously can't all get wrapped up in 25 minutes. And I just thank you guys for being honest and having your opinions. And I think just on what you said, I think that none of us do have the answers. There's no manual, there's no how-to, none of us really know what we're doing. We are operating blindly, but the good thing is that God knows what's up. So we are like in prayer with each other. We are in conversation with each other, which I think is exactly what is needed. You know, despite differing opinions, different ages, different times in which we were born, millennial or boomers or Gen Zs, we all are loved by God, which is good. So thank you so much for joining us for Hot Topics tonight. We hope that you enjoyed it. Like we've said before, we don't want this just to be a conversation between the three of us, but we want you to be involved. We want to know your opinion. So either DM either one of us or say something in the comments, and we can't wait to continue having this conversation next week Tuesday at our Hot Topics Bible study.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.